right, no opening video this episode. We're just going on, me and Kale. Like, okay, so every once in a while, I like to get you on because I don't like staying trapped in my bubble.
Yep.
Like I don't like staying trapped in the trad bubble. I don't like staying trapped in and you have a way of kind of like checking my propensity to do that. You know what I mean? Like it's very easy to just talk with your own people and you are someone who kind of gets me out of that. You're also somebody who has mentioned this phrase kayfabe.
Yep.
And I've never really known what it meant, but okay, so I'm gonna back it up a little bit and tell you after the 2020 election, I swore I would never ever care about politics again.
Yeah, of course.
I was done.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care about this stuff. It's just nonsense. I'm just gonna think about, my faith, my family, this and that. But when when the assassination attempt happened, it was like I couldn't help but get sucked back in.
Yeah.
And then on election night, it felt wrong. Like something in
What do you mean? What do you mean?
Okay, with the ease with which he won,
felt
off. Like I was just like, what? Wait a minute! I watched what happened in 2020. Like I watched it. It dragged out. They didn't announce the winner that night. They tried to play all these shit. None of that happened this time. It was just like, nope, he won. Okay, guys, I guess we give up. And the lack of a coherent narrative. Like a complete lack of coherent narrative whatsoever just shocked me. I was like, what is going like? It seems like even now the media is in complete shambles. They don't know what to do. They're trying to figure out how they're going to, and it doesn't feel real to me. So I've had this thought of like, is everything we're seeing fake? And you use the phrase kayfabe a lot. So I wanted to hear what your like perspective was on everything that we're seeing lately.
Yeah. No, and it's similar. I have a similar sort of sense of the whole thing. I was sort of thoroughly disgusted in the fallout of 2020. Of course, I watched with gritted teeth, what happened, from 20, from 20 all the way through, this past election, the Biden administration, and put that in scare quotes. And, I have developed a kind of skepticism of politics, broadly speaking. I pay attention, as you know, I do pay attention, but I have long sort of given up that sense that, elections could save us or anything. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't think elections are consequential. Clearly I do. But I know that my salvation, let's just sort of put it out there, my salvation does not hinge upon who is in or who is not in the White House, et cetera. And so, just a sort of a, kind of a gut check, a reality check in terms of what I should care about and what I should pay attention to. Now, that doesn't mean that whoever's in the White House or whoever is in, the House and the Senate, both at the federal level, but also the state level, isn't important. And that can affect me. You and I both know that. But, so I do pay attention to it on those grounds, but I do try to make sure that I am not overvaluing political theater. And so when I started to think of it in theater terms, I teach English and I do teach a great deal of Shakespeare. And, Shakespeare always has this sense that the story is a show and that there are these moments, these kind of tongue-in-cheek moments where a character is sort of making reference. What's up, Ups? Making reference to the fact that they're in the Globe and they're in the theater and they're doing this show. And so I think in part, Anthony, my sensibilities have been formed and shaped by Shakespeare, theater, and the idea of like a fourth wall, right? And so when I first heard the word kayfabe used in a kind of cultural analysis context, I believe it was Eric Weinstein, one of the Weinstein brothers from the old IDW days, and he talked about it, sort of the politics as wrestling, and the economy as wrestling, and cultural commentary as wrestling. And as soon as he said that, all these lights kind of went off in my head, right? Another sort of formative part of my kind of mental toolkit was the Truman Show, that Jim Carrey back in the day, in which this is completely fabricated reality TV, which was, as you remember, it was sort of right that was high reality TV times, right? That sort of stuff. And I knew as a young adult that watching, what was that MTV show on, like, with the house? Real World, right? I knew that it was fake, but it was real. And then immediately, like, oh, it was just like wrestling, because, man, 1985 WrestleMania 1, that was like prime time for me. Like, I mean, I was all in. And as I go back to my 12-year-old self, we all, like, it was always kind of, we were always like, is it real? Is it not real? Like, it probably isn't real, but man, it's so good. It's so much fun. And as you look at the sort of the history of professional wrestling, and then it was WWF, but then they had to change it to WWE. They were really tight in terms of the kayfabe, like the show, right? And for the audience, I should have said this from the get-go. Kayfabe is presenting staged events as if they are real.
Yeah.
Right. And you can really be kind of dedicated to the script, and they've got roles that you play. There's like the good guy and the bad guy, the face and the heel. There are all these sort of different characters and roles that you play along with. Sort of the quintessential example of this for my generation was Hulk Hogan and Roddy Piper. Like, those are the sort of the two guys. And anyway, they played with it magnificently. So when Eric brought this up, in a podcast I listened to, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago now, I immediately, it resonated, like, oh, of course, right? And I'll tell you, for me, one of the things that made me tap out of politics was when, if you look at all of the sort of the presidential elections from Trump backwards, right? Trump 1 and Trump 2, Trump 3, I should say, all these things. The smear from mainstream media was basically like, look, if the Republicans would just not nominate a Nazi, then we could have like a real election, and we could consider voting on the other side. And so what does the party do? They nominate Mitt Romney. And I watched in awe, really, as they turned Mitt Romney, Anthony, into a Nazi.
Voted for him, you're telling me?
Yeah, right. So that was a real turn. I'm like, you know what? This is all a load of crap. The mainstream media is engaged in fabrication. They're not engaged in reporting. And so that sort of made me kind of double down on that sensibility. So that's kind of, for me, that's the history of kayfabe.
Yeah. So, okay. So now I'm going to say this because I remember back after the assassination, then you have the Republican convention and they bring Hulk Hogan out. And I'm like, they're telling us right in front of our faces, right? Like, they're actually telling us right to our faces, this whole thing is pro wrestling. And it's, man, the danger to me is that I think the DEI and woke stuff was so over the top that maybe it was like a false flag almost. Like, so now you get Trump in, right? And he cancels DEI and he cancels woke. And it doesn't just happen in the federal government. Like, Google cancels it. They take it out of there's no longer
the NCAA, allegedly sort of,
They take Pride Month off the calendars. Like, this is like, wait a minute.
What?
So all of that, and the thing is, especially watching all the Mike Benz stuff where you're like, man, the CIA was behind all of this, like every single bit of it, even the rainbow movement, all of it. The CIA was behind all of it. Like, my wife's an artist, and we went I took her to the Met in New York City because they were having an exhibit on, was it a CC or no, it was Siena. There was an exhibit on Siena. So we went there to see that. Now the Met has some of the most beautiful Christian art you'll ever see in your life. If you're ever in New York, you have to go to the Met and see just the Byzantine art, the medieval Christian art. But then we get to the modern art, and my wife went to art school, and I try to explain to her that the CIA is even behind the art. Like they were the ones pushing. So
there's all kinds of speculation about what's the guy, the splatter paint guy? Oh gosh, I can't think of him.
Jackson Pollock.
Yeah, Jackson Pollock was sort of a front, and like that. There's all kinds of like really eye-opening, very interesting things. I mean, but we know this is not just in the art world, but it's also in the intellectual world. The Paris Review is apparently, seeded by the CIA as a kind of front. I mean, it all gets really muddy really fast when you start
even music, right? Like, so Mike Benz exposes how we were donating to all these NGOs, and some of these NGOs were propping up hip hop in third world countries that talked about revolution. And all of it is to sow dissent around the world so that we could cause revolution amongst the young, and essentially do what we did here in 2020, cause riots before an election, then a shady election, then you get your guy in and you arrest all the people that are on the opposition and stuff like that. So it's when you start to see all that, then you have to think, okay, so why were they pushing the DEI and woke stuff so much? And then how quickly it gets sealed up, right? Trump comes in and it's like overnight he signs executive orders and the whole thing disappears off the face of the earth. And now all of a sudden Democrats are not even going to touch this issue because it's so toxic. The whole thing was so fake to begin with that it makes me think whatever is happening with Trump could also be just, we're so relieved from the insanity that will go along with anything he says, right?
Yeah. And I share your skepticism, so just sort of, again, to sort of set this in the kind of what finally made me kind of really, look, I'm theoretically as excited as anyone to watch Doge, expose corruption, of course, right? And, when they roll out, well, this is, money is being laundered in this direction to this operation, that's all very exciting stuff. And it's also, it kind of oh yeah, I kind of thought that, right? So then that, of course, giving who I am, wait a second, are they just giving me red meat here, right? So that's part of the deal here. But when that they them chat got exposed, the national, was it the NAS?
Yeah, it was the NSA.
NSA, sorry. When the NSA they them sort of sex chat thing got exposed, I really got turned off. And I never watched TV. Anthony, never. The last time I watched TV was, I don't know, week 14 of the NFL. Yeah. And even that, I'm I can kind of watch for about a quarter and a half and I turn it off. I literally just canceled everything. Right. So, but but you catch clips on X, right? And so, I saw this, so this story comes out and it's all about how crazy this NSA, chat is. And it's gross and it's disgusting. And just so the audience understands, I do think that chat is real.
Yeah,
I do think that there are weird things, those kind of weird things going, right? So just important for me to point, just to sort of put that, place marker out there, right? But the way it was all done, so you see a couple of tweets roll out in the morning on that day, and then Tulsi Gabbard goes on Jesse Waters and Fox News, and she's saying, she says something to the effect of well, Jesse, not only should we do something we've already taken care of it, we have fired X, Y, and Z, and isn't it so great? And then it very quickly texts them, and this is why, this administration is so dedicated to, exposing government corruption. It was all just way too neat.
Yeah.
Now, last little thing hovering in the background for me is I've just gotten finished teaching the third book of the C.S. Lewis Ransom trilogy. It's called That Hideous Strength. And audience members, I know you probably heard people like me prattle on a lot about this in the last, couple of years. It really is a must read. You got to do it. It's so good.
Do I have to read the whole trilogy?
No, you don't.
Actually, can I pick the third one up?
Yeah, you can. I mean, I recommend the first two because they're wonderful in their own right. But That Hideous Strength is really the one that is talking about life here on this planet, the way things work, political and otherwise. And anyway, the main, they're two main characters, and they're a married couple, Mark Studdock and Jane Studdock. And Mark is sort of well, it's a long story, but is conscripted with this sort of shadow college to usher in, the technocracy.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, they are going to they want Mark to write newspaper articles. And his first reaction is like, I'm a sociologist. I don't want to be a journalist. If I wanted to be a journalist, I would have just done. He's like, and they're like, shut up, just do what we want you to do. And they say, well, we want you to write an article about the riot. And he says something like, well, what riot? Oh, the riot that's going to happen in 3 days. It's like, and he says, like, again, credulously, how can I write about a riot that's going to happen in 3 days? And they kind of look at him like, oh, you sweet summer child, you. Yeah. Right. And so what you find out is that they are staging, right, passing off as real and organic and as emergent a riot, which will then allow them to create martial law and for the forces of the NICE, which is the name of this evil sort of specter-like group from James Bond, right? It's this evil group, and they will come in and they will institute order, and they'll sort of take over control that way. And so, and I'm sure everybody in my audience right now can certainly feel resonances with what we've lived through in the past 6-7 years, right? So when I see Tulsi do this thing on Jesse Waters, I'm like, this is like, they knew about this, right? They set the whole thing up, and so that she could get on and do her victory lap on Fox News of all places, and it just looked too damn neat, And so, what do you make of that, Anthony? Like, how does that resonate with you?
Well, here's the thing. The things that we have been handed, like something like that. First off, the CIA went around putting out promo videos trying to attract the LGBT to these departments, right? And part of the reason they did that is because they're the easiest people to just, like, you don't even have to have those people in on anything. They'll just do the thing you want them to do because they're so malleable.
But that's the joke of the current thingism, right? A current thingist is exactly like, it's like Rent a Riot.
They're so malleable, these people. They'll do whatever the heck they're told to do without even like having to manipulate them that much,
Yeah, and it's like it's like my shit lib friends on Facebook. It's like they will like march in lockstep no matter whatever missive comes on high about what they're supposed to be outraged today. They're going to follow suit and just flood the zone with silly Facebook posts about how the world is not paying attention to literally Hitler. It's just
the thing is that so that plays into this too, because here's my worry. Because Trump even said this in his State of the Union the other day, whatever the heck that was, the joint session of Congress,
which is also like the most absurd show ever, right? If you're not looking at that stuff as a show, you're doing it wrong. But go ahead.
So he comes and he goes, look at these liberals. I could literally give a cure for cancer and they wouldn't stand up and clap, right? So there's a tendency for us who are watching this to anything Trump does, we see the left's reaction to it and they freak out and we're like, well, this must be good. This must be good because the left is freaking out about it. And we're just going full force into anything he does. The idea that the Greenland and Panama Canal stuff, right? And it's being presented to us as if, well, Trump is looking for hemispheric defense now, and we're going to make Canada a partner. And it's like, okay, but like when you look at some of the NWO stuff and like like the whole idea of a global government, like they break it up into regions, and there's like 10 regions they break it up into, and Canada, America, and Mexico are one of those regions. So when you see Trump doing it, like on the surface, it's like, well, the liberals hate it, so it must be good. But in reality, he's kind of playing into this whole idea, and we're just going for it because it's Trump, right? The thing that really gave me the most pause in the past couple of weeks is the Trump Gaza AI video.
Okay, and Grizz just predicted that 2 seconds ago, so that's perfect. That's exactly right.
So it's this.
He says if we're loyal enough, I think I could put it up too, right? I don't know. If we're loyal enough, we get a room at the Trump Gaza hotel.
Yeah.
Right?
So it's like this whole the MAGA worship of Trump should give everybody pause.
Yep.
I've never seen in my life worship of a man the way we see it now. Okay. And it's hard.
Just quick question on that. I'm tracking with you. I'm not disagreeing with you, but I mean, we did live through the hope and change era.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that was pretty substantial. But
Yeah,
but your point's real. Go ahead, keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't know. You know what? All right, so it's hard to not see. All right, you know what? Let me bring up Joshua Charles's tweet
Yeah, go
because
ahead.
I really do think like look, I said something the other day, and just watching the MAGA reaction to it was what gave me like even more pause. Like, so,
Yeah.
all right, so Joshua Charles wrote, I'm not going to bring it up because it'll take me too long, but
Yeah, our tech guy's not here with us right now.
I am disturbed by the president's recent post on Truth Social about Trump Gaza, which literally means Trump strong city. The lyrics of the music behind it speak of Trump coming to set you free, bringing the light for all to see. What is this light? The rest of the video is not reassuring. Feast and dance, the deed is done, it tells us. Is the scenario supposed to be a fait complete? Fait complete. I don't know how to pronounce
it. Fait complete, yeah.
Yeah. Among its various images, it then portrays cross-dressing dancing men in scantily clad female clothing on a beach. Clearly, whatever scenario is depicted does not reflect anything like the moral values of most Palestinians. The president is also shown interacting with very immodest dressed women. He's at a strip club, basically.
Yeah.
It portrays money falling from the sky to the delight of adults and children. The whole video feels like a materialistic...
Which is literally like making it rain at a strip club. Keep going.
Yeah,
sorry.
it's crazy. As if human happiness and joy is found in money, things, and pleasure of the flesh. While I desire Muslim Arabs to come to Christ, this video seems to think what they really need is post-Christian American hedonism and decadence, mammon and all its allurements. Elon makes multiple cameos throughout the video, like a fellow consul of a revived Roman Republic. Okay, so look, you don't even have to go through all of Josh's tweet here. What I see what he's saying.
Yeah,
he's giving allusions to a John the Baptist figure, like a Roman consul and Nero. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, so look, I'm not, I wrote in response to this, I said, hypothetically speaking, there's no other figure alive on earth that fits the role of Antichrist better than Trump, with Elon as his John the Baptist figure, making straight the paths before him. So the idea is, like you were saying with Obama, the worship with Obama, the difference is the Antichrist does not come to fool the lost. The lost are already lost. He comes to fool the elect, right?
That's good.
And there's this slight lack of truth in this. Look, everything we're seeing is good. It's so hard not to get swept up in this movement because it's like
Think of it like this, Anthony. I don't know. When's the last time you've been to a football game, like a pro football game?
I have never been to an NFL game, but
when you go to a game, right? NFL, more so in college.
Yeah.
Full disclosure, but try, or it's the same thing at a basketball game, right? So try to go to like a high-end college sport event, a football or basketball, or a high-end pro or college baseball event, basketball event. And when somebody hits a home run or drains a three or slams a dunk or hits a buzzer beater, try not to stand up and cheer.
Get swept up into it. It's like you just kind of, or even the wave, when they do the wave, you're like,
the spirit is real. And like we feel it, like we resonate with each other in those moments in a way that all of a sudden, you're under the illusion that you have agency over yourself. And then boom, somebody hits a grand slam. You're like, let's go. And everybody's going crazy. And it's impossible not to get caught up in the spirit. So your point here with sort of this Trump wave, I think is really an important one to bring up, because it's almost impossible to resist if you're positively predisposed to liking things like Doge, liking things like dunking on the libs at the State of the Union address.
So look, the thing is, Elon's going in with Doge, and it's like, how could you not be happy that he's getting rid of this nonsense? Because they were pumping money into these disgusting NGO programs with the intent to overturn foreign governments. Like that was the actual intent. Though these NGOs, even Catholic charities, even like all of the ones that you think would be good, their purpose was never actually to help anyone. They may have had a few byproducts of that as the mask in
Well,
order to operate in
yeah,
these
it's the
countries.
sugar to make the medicine go down, right? You might have a few nice little things over here and there, of course. Yeah, of course.
But the whole point of it was so that we would be able to control who was in power in foreign countries, so that
Without
we
tanks. Without
exactly.
tanks, right? Without tax.
So you dump all this money in. Now, what happens is they then turned it against our own people and did it in our own country, which is another thing. It's like after Trump gets in 2016, you have the Women's March, right? And
Yep.
and you
right
have
away, by the way. You remember that?
immediately,
Yeah.
immediately, like the
With
Women's March
with
comes.
printed material and like the whole thing, right?
So bizarre, right? Then Trump gets in this time and there's silence. It's now you
Mind
can
blowing.
say
Yeah.
it's because these people are all afraid they're going to get discovered and all that, but
Come
it
on,
just
yeah.
it just makes me nervous that there's absolutely no resistance to anything he does. You have outlets like even CNN coming out and putting out polls going, hey, 70% of the American public liked the address that he gave before Congress the other. It's almost too much for me to just not take a second and go, wait a minute. Is there something going on here that we're running it? Look, think about this. You now have conservatives elated about an administration that consists of liberals. I mean, you have
But
Tulsi Gabbard.
they're all ex-Democrats, right? It's so funny.
Every single one of them are ex-Democrats. Like it's not. And look, it's easy to point to the IVF thing. It's easy to point to Trump's position on how his views changed on abortion a little bit. Those are red meat. Those are easy. What I'm worried about is that the AI stuff that he's marching us towards, right? Like, in other words, when Trump comes out with Operation Warp Speed, if he would have won 2020, you'd have seen MAGA praising the shot.
Well, that's I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree. You know, and as a truly as a conscientious objector, you know, I totally agree. Totally agree.
If he wins in 2020, MAGA would have been the ones. Well, Trump came out and he saved us. And the only reason that narrative flipped was because Joe Biden gets in and he starts forcing it on people. And that's what.
Correct.
Now, there's also the idea that Trump starts the 2 weeks to stop the spread and gives the authority to all these governors who then shut down their states. And the mass is shut down for months. Like, we do not have the holy sacrifice of the mass worldwide. It's never happened in history where
I remember
it gets shut down.
You know, I was a daily communicant. I had been a daily communicant for probably, I don't know, 5 years, maybe more. But, you know, it's tough when you have little kids, as you know, right? But it's at the point my kids were older enough, I could sort of sneak off and do the morning thing. And I remember I got kicked out of morning mass. And I'm like, dude, I mean, I live here.
Yeah.
Like, what are we doing? And I tell you, I you know, true full disclosure, I don't think I've recovered from that, Anthony.
Look, it happened. Lockdowns happened and started on my 38th birthday, March 16th, 2020. This is my 38th birthday.
Wow.
They come in. It's like, I'll never forget it. It was like surreal. I'm like, it's my birthday and they're shutting everything down. What is happening here? You know? Okay, somebody's saying Steve Bannon was never a Democrat, but Steve Bannon is not a conservative either. Look,
he's not a neocon. He's not a neocon. That's
he's a populist.
Sure. Yeah, and Mark, I take your point about Secretary of State Rubio. I totally agree with that. You know, and my point is that there are all of these sort of. I think Anthony's point is that, you know, there's a bunch of people that conservatives, you know, whatever that means, right? Because that's part of this question, right? Is like conservatives would have you know, bemoaned 5 years ago, and now all of a sudden they're
look, the Overton window has shifted so much, like so much, and it's really, but in some ways in good ways, right? Like, I remember being a freaking neocon in the early 2000s. Rah, let's go to Iraq, and I'm so glad I got out of that mindset. And I don't know if I would have if it wasn't for some of these positions he's putting in. Look, everybody has to understand. Like, I'm not like, oh, this is bad. I don't know. That's the point. Like, I don't know how much of this. I don't know how much of this is fake. Is what I'm trying to figure out, because it worries me that the whole entire thing is being presented to me as a show. Even the Trump fight stuff. Like, it's like, man, this is you couldn't have planned this better. And it got me from being somebody who was adamant that I'm never voting again. I'll never vote in another election again after 2020 and thinking politics is just fake to, okay, I have some skin in the game. And I'm getting sucked into it. Right. So now at that point, we start actually doing shows on politics between that. I was telling Kale before the show. So after the assassination attempt, we had about 14,000 subscribers. After that happens, we start doing shows on Trump because I'm like getting kind of swept up in the moment. And I'm like, I can't help but talk about this stuff. It's just too important. We did not budge from 14,000 subscribers until the end of the year. So 6 months it took to get from 14,000 to 15,000. After Trump gets elected, we went from 15,000 to 26,000 up to date. Like it's so bizarre.
Crazy.
Like
it's crazy.
The throttling of our.
So I'm asking you, you're, I just want to say it out loud. You feel like that both aspects of that have been inorganic in your estimation, or what are you feeling?
I don't know. I just know, I can only tell you the feeling I had on election night. The feeling I had on election night was something's off here. Like this isn't right. Like he won too easily. He won too easily. Like there was absolutely no resistance to him. Then he comes in, he gets every single one of his appointments through without even like the slightest bit of. The only one that doesn't get through is Gates, and I feel like that was like obvious. Like he's never getting in, you know. So
yeah, I always
thought
that was Gates. I thought that was a loss leader, right? They're throwing him out. If they get him through, fantastic. But if they don't, then that makes everybody else kind of double down. Yeah,
that's the big ask, right? He gets the big ask.
Right,
so,
right.
But even to get Cash Patel in, to get Tulsi Gabbard in, to get RFK Jr. and now RFK Jr. puts out like the guy that we get in thinking he's gonna disrupt the system puts out an article the other day talking about how great the measles vaccine is and stuff. And I was just like, I don't know, man. I don't know how many of these guys are just. I don't know how much of it is a show. What I do know is you really have to be weary of what the Catechism says in 675, where it says, man will fall for an apparent solution to the problem, right? And it will be very man-centered, this apparent solution to our problems. And I see so much Trump worship. I mean, from that video with the golden statues of him and all of it is just idol worship, right? And I'm not saying Trump is the Antichrist, just to be clear. But he is a type, because if it's not him, it's going to be a figure like him that is going to sweep us all into it. I've just never seen anything like what we're witnessing right now. And I'm happy about 99% of the things that are happening. And then I'm like, should I have pause about this? And it's hard for me to have this discussion when I have Nick on the show, because Nick is he loves Trump. And I'm like, he gets me swept up into it, like being happy about this stuff too. But it's like, I need somebody a little more like grounded to go, wait a minute, maybe we should be worried about, first off, we're never getting the Epstein stuff. Like everybody just has to realize we're never, ever getting that stuff. Like it's just not happening.
It's too hot. And it's obviously too hot.
And it's like, all of the showmanship of having Pam Bondi go on Fox News every day. Like I never saw the head of the DOJ doing that, the attorney general going on news programs daily like that. Like she seems to me like she just wants to be a podcaster with a spotlight on her, you know?
Yeah.
And it's
this glory right here, you know.
It's all a show. That's all I'm saying. Like it's all just like a show. Like, oh, look at who we got in here. We're gonna put an end to this stuff, and it doesn't seem like anything real is even happening. First off, and the things that are happening, like I'm worried about the direction it leads us. And is Trump putting in place the system that is actually going to be the thing that kills us in the long run? Because anything that Trump does is great, and we just have to follow along with it.
Yeah, so my biggest concern, if I had to put a finger on it, you know, it's Elon. And
yes,
you know, I want to say a couple of things about this. You know, I am as an ex fan, like I love the website. I think him purchasing that website is one of the sort of the most politically consequential things that we've experienced in a sort of weird secondhand kind of way. But the fact that there is a platform that people can more closely say the truth, right, than before is absolutely massive. And so I'm very thankful for them. I'm very thankful for him for buying that. I really do think it's important. And by just having one legitimate alternative, it makes all the other ones have to at least pretend a little bit more like they should care about free speech. And so I do think
let's put it this way: since Elon takes over X, the restrictions on YouTube have completely changed. Like I haven't heard of a channel getting banned.
Yeah,
since
we haven't. Right. We don't have to do the code thing like we used to have to do, right? Yeah, no, I think that's true. So I think that Google clearly paid attention. They recognize that Twitter, now X, is a legitimate threat for eyeballs. And so I'm very grateful for that. So full stop, give him that.
Yeah.
What he's doing with SpaceX is pretty friggin' incredible. Like I love that. I love that energy. I love that sense of frontiers. And I while I am a deep tech skeptic, which we'll get to in just a second, I also am not a Luddite. I do think that tech is important, and it is going to be part of any kind of potential thriving that we might have as a nation, as a people, as a community. I think is well served by that kind of technology. All right, but the two things that just send me over the frickin' edge are the Neuralink thing and his obsession with IVF and that kind of
singularity.
Weird... Yeah, right.
He keeps talking about singularity and the transhumanism thing. Look,
that's right. So I'm connecting Neuralink
and
IVF to transhumanism, just so we know. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like this stuff should terrify all of us, right? And look, when the pandemic hits, Trump puts forward Operation Warp Speed. He's the one who lifts all of the red tape so that they could rush through the thing that winds up being a type of the mark of the beast. Like it just does. Like I don't care what anybody says. If you don't get this thing, you can't buy or sell. I mean,
it's
that's
a type,
what
right? It doesn't have to be like the literal thing. It's a type. It's clearly, yeah.
So what happens when the next catastrophe comes? The next catastrophe comes, and Trump will once again do the very thing he did the last time. Okay, so this is what I'm trying to just get people to pay attention to. So Molly said, she goes, I am weary of everything, but I still don't regret my vote, right? That's my point. Like things were so insane that any kind of notch in the other direction feels like a win, right? And it was. I mean, it look the thing that that's what really concerns me, though. It's because it was such an easy one. It feels like a false flag. It feels like the DEI and woke stuff. No, that never had any kind of popular support. It's like maybe 15-20% of people support it. 80% of people are against that. So when he's ending that stuff, 80% of the country is like, thank God they're ending that stuff. Like this is so, and everybody feels like we're getting back to normalcy, but really, there's almost nothing normal about anything we're seeing now, right?
That's right.
It's just this, and you think about it.
So in that moment, right, Anthony? Like this is why the two of us are like raising that eyebrow, like, what's going? This seems to show. This seems to, look, we know that Kayfabe operates on the, it's like setup, escalation, climax, resolution. Right. And it really feels like we're sort of speed running this sort of these like weird little mini loops. I'm like, I've seen this before, and it doesn't really strike me.
Kale, every single day you wake up and you go, what's on today on the Trump show?
Right.
What's on the Trump show today? I got to see what Trump does today. It's the Trump show. I mean, it's literally what it is.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. And so therefore, I'm a skeptic. Right.
Yeah.
This is not, Go ahead.
Listen to this. You have Zelensky, a former actor and comedian,
who
played the role of the president, who's now the president of Ukraine. You have Trump, who plays the role of the reality TV star who fires everybody. He's the boss who fires everybody. And now he's the president of the biggest, most powerful country in the world. And the two of them have this showdown in the Oval Office on TV in front of the cameras the other day. And all of it is just this dramatized show. It's I just, man, it's exciting to watch, and it's like I'm wrapped into it myself. Look, it is so hard to not be excited when Trump puts a guy like Zelensky in his place. But how much of it is even real? I don't know, man. It's
Yeah.
like,
So okay. Yeah. So lest we fall into a kind of perpetual spin cycle of cynical doubt.
that's
Right.
what I'm worried about too,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
not believing anything you see. So
So I think Trump is someone who, look, I mean, this is, everybody knows. I mean, he loves WWE, right? And he and McMahon are boys. Like
yep.
he's been on the show, for God's sakes, right? He's sort of done, he's played this whole game. And so he's clearly savvy. Trump, he understands optics, he understands. So he's clearly savvy with all these things, and certainly in ways in which he was not savvy the first time around. Like, I do genuinely believe that he was surprised he won in 2016. Like, and I do know this a little bit because I know, I know people who worked on the transition team in 2016. And so, like,
Yeah,
they
it's like
were
he was like taken by surprise. And he was like,
yeah,
who
like,
the hell am I even
wow.
gonna put in these positions?
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's like the dog. It's like the dog who finally catches the car that he's been chasing. The mailman's car he's been chasing every day. So I do think that's so. I do think that there are some things that are real. Right. I think I want to make sure that I don't fall off into some sort of postmodern, infinitely deferred signifier type of thing. No, I do think so. When I look at something like the Zelensky debacle, my sense of that is that Trump. And I watched the 40-minute thing, right? Which I do think is kind of important, So I watched the thing, and my sense, and now having read around it, like what was going on before and around and all this sort of stuff, my sense is that Trump and Rubio and Vance were frustrated with the way that he behaved publicly and talked privately. Right. So just those two layers are kind of a big deal. Anytime any of us have ever seen these kinds of meetings in the Oval Office with the president of the United States and the president of Uzbekistan or whatever, right, sitting there and they're doing this thing, and you can see the click, 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 you see the lights flashing. That's like act 4, scene 3 in a play. Right. We know this, right? And so, in a just off screen, that there are handlers like giving them signs, and there's the boom mic up over here, there's all those kinds of things, right? So if you know those sort of things, you understand that this is a staged like bit that they're doing. What I do think happened is that because of their pre-existing frustrations with the way that Zelensky acts, right? And as you pointed out, that's his background. They wanted him to sort of do this publicly. And so I do think that there's a way in which you can kind of, rope somebody into sort of doing what you want, like manifesting themselves, exposing themselves on TV. So again, like, is that real or fake? It's kind of both in a weird sort of way. And it's the same reason why we actually like wrestling.
Yeah.
Right. It's like we're all participating in this heel and face turn and the swerve and the reveal and the shoot, and like we're all participating in this thing. But again, I want to be sure that folks in the audience understand, I do think that there's a real thing going on in the background. It's just it's really hard to tell what is what.
It goes down to when the CIA goes and recruits the LGBT trans people into the NSA. What they're doing is real, but in a way, it's like, well, we're bringing these people in because we know exactly what they're going to do. Like it's like the thing they're doing is real. They are doing that, but it's so predictable. People are so predictable in how they'll react to things that if you get look. This is my fear with any kind of political trial that we have, right? So if you're talking about, even say Steve Bannon had to go to court in New York for the wall thing, right?
Yep. Well, he was in jail, wasn't he?
He did no. He went to jail for obstruction of justice in Congress or something, lying to Congress or something like that. That's what he actually did time for. Right. But then he had to go to court for the wall, the private funding of the wall. They said that he robbed people, whatever. Okay. But he winds up pleading guilty to that. Because if you're think about the things we do on our phone now, right? And especially when it comes to Twitter, right? So we'll get back to Elon too. Like a guy like Elon who's talking about Neuralink and putting chips in people's brains, having access to Twitter now, like it's unlike any other social media in that you put your every thought out. Like it's not quite like Facebook or Instagram where you're putting videos and pictures up and then maybe you put a paragraph up. Like Twitter is one of those things where it's like a thought comes to your mind, you fire it off, right? You're putting your ever innermost, like every single feeling you have goes out on this stupid website. The amount of data this guy is collecting on us. To then be able to use that for his Neuralink project. And that's what scares me about him going into these departments as well. But to get back to the Steve Bannon thing, like if you're going to have a trial with the amount of things we do on our phones, so you're supposed to be judged by a jury of your peers, right? So then they supposedly randomly select people to go into this jury, and then they pick from, they pick from that jury of your peers to pick 12 people. But the thing is, if you only give, if the choices are not of the pool are not actually random, because at this point they know every single thing we think. So if you only give a pool of people who lean left, like at this point, people who lean left are so predictable. You can never have another fair trial in this country. You can make the outcome go as easily as you want. With the Derek Chauvin trial, it was. If they only give you a pool of people who have shown sympathy to BLM, then no matter which 12 you pick, you know the outcome without even having to pay off jurors or swing. You just get the exact outcome you desire.
Right. It's like going to a pond that's been stocked with bass and hoping you're going to get, I don't know, what, a perch or a catfish. It's like, you're going to get exactly what you're fishing for because it's been pre-stocked, right? So the other part, that I was sort of thinking through here, Anthony, is this idea of astroturfing, right? And the astroturfing, the whole idea of that is that you pass off something as organic, that which is inorganic, right? So just think literally here, like, physical astroturf is something that's green and made to look like grass. It's clearly fake, but it's made to look like grass, and it's not the real thing. So if you can astroturf something, you can sort of pretend that what you're seeing is real when it's not. So that's a part of this soup, that we're trying to discern, isn't it, Anthony?
We did an episode on this because I started getting forced into my algorithm on YouTube, podcasts like The Bulwark and podcasts like all these leftist podcasts, that when I went and I actually looked at the channels and I scrolled all the way back, none of them started small and grew organically. They bought channels with millions of subs and just put these guys in, and now all of a sudden they're getting millions of views, right? And it's like, there's nothing organic about that. That is AstroTurf. They saw how much was able to be accomplished through guys like Joe Rogan and all the podcasts. So now they bought up platforms to get their message out and make it seem like these guys are just organically grown podcasters. None of them are.
Right. But this is an old story, Anthony. I mean, this is an old story. I mean, the first people to really kind of master this were the Hollywood star makers of the, early Hollywood. That there are ways of creating a sense like there's a groundswell or everybody just loves this thing. And it's like, it's rarely as organic as we would like to think. And look, to be blunt, it's rarely as organic as I would wish it were. Like, I but it's not. And anytime, look, the screen is like a magic device, right? It's like meant to confound and cast spells and give people the sense of it really does, right? And so I make it a habit to listen to things as well as watch them on screen, because or you watch it with the sound off, or you can kind of play with this thing, because the screen is really the ultimate confound. That, man, I don't know if we can figure it out truly, in this age of media. I don't know if I don't know. I struggle with the power of this medium, especially when it even looks kind of more real than the fake stuff we see on cable news.
Yeah, look, that's okay. So we talked about in the green room a little bit. I had somebody send us a message that said, I like Anthony and Rob's show because they're not pretentious, right?
Right.
And it's because I kind of play the character of a dumb guinea,
Yeah.
like I
Yeah.
kind of,
Right, but as I quickly told you, you're not a dumb guinea, right? You're actually
there's
pretty
a bit of
thoughtful.
kayfabing going
Right,
on in
right.
that character.
Well, look,
I'm
we're
playing.
both playing a role here. I mean, that's
Yeah,
we have to acknowledge, and I'm fine with that. The weird thing is, like, Anthony, in our respective professions, I'm a teacher, you're like a roads guy, like you literally work on the
yeah,
roads. We both wear uniforms,
yeah,
like in this weird kind of way. And I think as soon as you wear a uniform for a living, it's like all bets are off.
yeah. That's kind of what we're getting at here, right? It's like, so there is reality happening. It's just I want people, especially people who have faith. Like, if you are a Christian and you have faith, like, you have to see through some of this stuff and not just go marching lockstep in with anything Trump does. It's a very dangerous thing to do, to just follow along with him because the libs are mad, because it is very easy to get sucked into jumping up in the stands when a home run gets hit, right?
That's right.
It's the same exact thing as getting swept up in the moment. And the Canada stuff should make us nervous. The Mexico stuff should, like, with the tariff wars he's starting, should make us all nervous.
Yeah.
The even look, I want the Ukraine war over with.
Yeah, of course.
But there's also the chance this man could start World War III in the way he's going about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like the way Trump does things, it's like, man, you don't know which way it's going to go. And my biggest worry is the Gaza stuff.
Okay.
Because I could just see a scenario where Trump turns Gaza into the Riviera of the Middle East. And next thing you know, there really are golden statues of this man, and there is Trump worship going on, and it's stuff I just think we all need to be wary of.
Yeah, I would say, how I've kind of been filing that information in my head for the time being is sort of similar to the way that I'm filing in the Greenland stuff. Although it's different, I get it, but I think this is. I'm inclined to think this is showmanship. I'm inclined to think it's this sort of thing.
I don't.
Okay, cool. Well, why?
I think Greenland. Look, he's trying to do something very specific with
Greenland.
Greenland.
No, Greenland for sure, because that's a resources access question.
It's strategic, right? Like,
right,
he wants Canada, Greenland, North America, and Mexico to all be like. He really is trying to go for hemispheric defense, which is on the surface makes great sense. It's like, we don't need to be fighting these international wars all over the world. We don't need to be the world police. Like, I am for that. It's like, yes, let's get the hell away from. Let's just worry about our neighbors that are closest to us. But at the same time, it's like, then we just become one of the regions in the globalist plan. It's just, you don't know which way it's going to play. And look, you bring in Canada and break it up into 5 provinces and make those states. It's now you're talking about, once again, getting back to the point of elections just going one way again, and you don't know who gets it. Every single thing Trump has done has been an executive order. They have not passed a single law yet. Right, and we saw what happened in his last term, where Biden got in, undid every single one of those executive orders. He's doing things by fiat, and they can be undone overnight the first second if somebody else gets in.
Right, because we truly live in decadent politics, because the sclerosis of the body politic, especially in Washington D.C., is clear and evident. And I know people who say, well, the point is to sort of make it slow. I get all that. I've studied civics. I know that gridlock is not a bug; it's a feature. I get it. Okay, I do. But we are in this weird stage, right? What is it? When Obama said, like, I've got a phone and I've got a pen, and we're kind of stuck in this bad form of decadent posturing politics that is, not going to serve us well long term. And ultimately, my skepticism is probably much less about Trump statues, although I certainly don't like that. I just
don't like the symbolism of it.
To me, it's just
the symbolism,
golden calf stuff. I get it.
Yeah.
But more significantly is that we are still a body that is sclerotic. We do not know how to legislate. We have given up legislation, right? And that is a problem long term, because we're going to get into sort of this tit for tat back and forth business that is not really stable. It's not a stable set. It's fundamentally volatile, I think.
Yeah. Look, okay. The the thing with the golden statue, it's not the golden statue, it's the people who are acting like he is an idol is what scares me, right?
Right.
The MAGA movement going along with anything he says is what scares me, because everything seems great right now. It's one win after another. Every single day I wake up and Trump's doing another thing. It's like, oh, it's Irish History Month, and everybody's like, oh yeah, we got rid of Black History Month, and
It's so
it's
dumb,
all
man. Oh,
it's
it's dumb.
all it's all just showmanship that does nothing. Like it doesn't. It's like, oh, we're gonna have this big press conference so you guys can see
Right.
me sign this thing that does nothing,
Right.
and we're all excited because it's pissing off the left. And I'm worried about the next major event that comes, because they did it to him under his last term, right? Towards the end of his term, we got hit with this pandemic,
Yeah.
and he's the one who gave the power to them to, even though he wasn't the president who, like, because it was an election year and you can come up with all the excuses in the world, he's the one that gave them the power to shut us down.
Yeah.
He gave it all to the governors. He didn't I just worry what he'll do in another disaster situation, and I worry that if he is the president, will MAGA just go lockstep with everything he wants to do?
I mean, it certainly feels that way. I mean,
Yeah.
I've not seen, I look on some level, I think people like me and you coming out right now and saying this kind of stuff is like probably a little bit surprising certainly would be surprising for MAGA heads.
Yeah, dude, you can't criticize the man without, like, and that's why I'm trying to like make it clear. Like, yeah, I love that he's getting rid of DEI and woke and all this stuff, but I want to just acknowledge the showmanship of it all, and that he hasn't really done anything that's going to have lasting effects yet. And even having Tulsi as DNI and having Kash Patel at the FBI, it's like they're throwing us these little tiny boats. Like, oh, we got rid of the trans people at the NSA chat. It's like, cool, great. Oh, we arrested a few people who were selling secrets to China. Cool.
Right.
All right. Have you guys restructured the way this stuff works so that we don't end up back in the same position we were? Like, even the USAID stuff, it's like, oh, we cut funding off to USAID, and we just gave all those funds to the State Department to use it. Like, right. You still are doing the thing that you said you were. Like, it looks on the surface like things are getting done, and it looks like we're undoing the deep state. This, to me, is signs and wonders. It's like, he'll come, it's signs and wonders, and it looks on the surface like all these beautiful and amazing things are happening, but really nothing's getting done. You're just kind of reorganizing things. The money is still there. It's still going to go out how the CIA and State Department wants to spend it. It's just, maybe it's not going to these crazy NGOs, and it's not going to be leftist propaganda anymore. Maybe it'll just be more focused on a different angle. You're still leaving the blob in place to do the thing that they have been doing.
Well, that's the real question, right? Is the blob, did the blob flip and go from heel to face, or face to heel, right? That's the question. Is it still empowered to do what it has been doing since World War II? Right. And I think both of us are going to remain skeptical until we see otherwise. There's nothing, I have never, to your point about the sort of the utter quiet and calm, thanks, Big Mo, the utter calm, the utter quiet and calm in the aftermath, instead of the sort of the march on Washington with pussy hats and all that sort of stuff, we got like nothing, and it's sort of like, and yeah, okay, like, I've heard people say, oh, maybe everybody's just kind of exhausted. Like, that's fine. I mean, but nothing, like, really?
Yeah.
And that doesn't strike me as real either, right?
How about this? Like, as Trump comes into office, Francis ends up on his deathbed. Like, that is almost too, like, are you kidding me? Like, we're dealing with the incoming of this, world-changing president, and the end of the Francis era.
Hate him or love him, he is a deeply consequential historical figure.
Yeah,
Trump is. Now, so let's talk a little bit about Francis. I'm curious. He's still not doing well. God bless him. I can't believe he's still alive. Honestly, I thought he was going to be dead a week ago.
Days ago, yeah.
Yeah, no, so he's very sick. So sooner or later, we're going to have that likely we're going to have that transition within this Trump term, right?
Yeah. Forget this Trump term. I don't think Francis ever leaves the hospital, and if he does, it'll be like on hospice care.
Yeah.
Right. So they may be setting something up in the Vatican just for the looks of getting him out of the hospital. But I don't think this man, I think we're on the twilight of this papacy, and it could be a month, it could be 2 weeks, it could, but we're at the end of it.
So what do you make of that? So you and Rob here on Avoiding Babylon obviously run a Catholic channel, and I was in the audience when you were talking about it a couple of weeks ago. It's kind of going fallow a little bit as they're sort of unsure. But this is also going to mark a real change, I would think.
Yeah. I hope it marks a real change, right?
Yeah,
you hope it doesn't accelerate. Look, there's a couple of different options. Like, there could be somebody elected who, watching the things Trump has done with his executive orders, maybe you get a pope in who just starts issuing papal bulls, and he's like, "This is it. We're getting rid of the Novus Ordo. We're doing this."
That's right. That's right.
But the chances of that are so minuscule, though. It's like, I don't even know if we have a man in the cardinalate with the courage to do something like that at all.
Yeah.
More likely, you're going to either get a Francis II or a Benedict XVII, and I don't know which one is worse, right? Because if you get
explain this to folks in my orbit who know a little bit about Catholicism, but like probably look at like conservative Catholics as being the antidote to Francis Catholics. You're you and Rob are sort of talking about this third thing. If you could sort of just share that.
Yeah. So look, if you get Francis II, you're getting an actual liberal in there, right? Like, and some of the guys that they put in, that because of the information age, almost everything these guys have said publicly. Like, you could just go back and look it up. So you'll know right away if you got a Francis II, even if he doesn't choose that name. Right. You'll be able to go back and look at statements they've made on the LGBT or this or that. Yeah. So if you get a Francis II, I think it'll further fracture the invisible schism that is already there. There's already there's already a schism. It's just it's almost invisible. I mean, it's just, for all intents and purposes, there are two churches under the same structure at the moment. Yep. They believe they're essentially two different religions. One is they conflate liberal policy with being Christian, and the other one is more. The problem is, even the conservatives have they can twist politics into their version of things too. Yeah. So but there's essentially two different structures within the same church. Now, if you get a Benedict XVII would be a figure like Benedict XVI. He would be somebody who is very pro what happened at the Second Vatican Council, where there were a lot of changes. There's this more ecumenical approach to other religions, all these kinds of things. If that happens, I think what's problematic about it is you will start to get the conservative Catholics who have just kind of been disaffected by Francis start to defend these issues, defend this Pope no matter what he says, as if MAGA defends everything Trump says. And the problem with that is there's a lot of problems that need to be addressed in the church. So if you don't get a Trump figure who does come in issuing these papal bulls, getting rid of bad cardinals, getting rid of bad bishops, if you don't have that kind of a figure, all you're doing is extenuating the problem further into the future and kicking the ball down to the next generation to deal with. So you don't want that. So it's almost like that figure would be the worst one. You want another Francis II in because it'll further make the divide obvious, or a Pius XIII who will make the divide. You want to separate the sheep from the goats.
Right. So you're arguing for a sort of an accelerationist position where the contradictions are clear but cryptic, and if you have eyes to see, you can kind of see them, but if you're sort of casually paying attention, you don't really see much. Like, everybody's Catholic, ha 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 ha, but in reality that's not true. And so if we kind of put this church on hospice, we could extend this indefinitely to the next generation. But if we can accelerate the contradictions, then it'll be a clarifying moment.
That's it. And my greatest desire is that the next Pope will be so clear in either direction that there is that the Pope splainer disappears, right? So it's either so bad that the Pope splainer just goes, I don't know.
I'm done.
I don't know. I
Yeah.
can't.
Yeah,
Or it's so far in the other way where it's so clearly Christian teaching that there's no need to explain it because it's just, this is evil.
yeah,
This is
yeah,
not, so my prayer is that we no longer have a need for a pope splainer because things are so clear in either direction.
So what I find interesting in this conversation, is we tend to think of it as like, oh, like what's going to happen at the next conclave, right? In the movie and all that kind of stuff, right? But what I'm really more interested is like think about your diocese. Well, I know you're probably in Long Island, but think about the New York area.
Yeah.
Just think about the sort of the New York area. When the boomers die, which is coming, right? And it's a cliff, as you and I have talked about before. What kind of institutional church is going to be left? Did you see? And the reason why I asked this, right? There's a perfect image of this. It was on X maybe 2 weeks ago, and in the Archdiocese of Chicago made more bishops than priests.
That's crazy.
Okay, think about that, right? So those of us who are in Catholic circles understand exactly, like, that's batshit, like that's crazy, right?
Like you have nobody in seminary, you're not ordaining anybody, and you're just putting more administrators in. It's so
right. It's like a university all of a sudden,
yeah,
right? And so when the boomer cliff happens, what's going to be left? Like what's left, brother?
I don't know. I mean, that's why I loved reading.
Idiots like us, we're left. That's fine.
I loved reading through that Benedict XVI when he was Cardinal Ratzinger, his prophecy for the church.
Yep.
Going forward, how it's going to be stripped of all its dignity, it's going to be stripped of all its structures, all that. Because I just see that coming. I don't see a way around that.
Yeah, me too. You and I are one accord about that.
Yeah, I don't see how we avoid that with just and I think that part of the reason Catholics actually don't get attacked so much by the cultural left is because you have a Francis figure in there. Yeah. Because he seems like he's pulling the church to the left. Yeah. It seems like that's why they're like, all right, lay off the Catholics a little bit. They're coming along. They're still a little behind everybody else, but they're coming along.
No, that's right. That's so true.
But if you get a figure who comes out and is just like, no, this stuff is evil, you'll start seeing persecution on Catholics in a way you've never seen before. And I don't see any way around, either way, you'll either go left and people will stop believing the faith because there is no supernatural faith in leftism. Like it's just progressive, what would you call it? Like somebody who's just pushing for something. It's nothing supernatural. Yeah, it's nothing supernatural about it. So I think that we're going to lose all the structures. I think what will remain is the young faithful who are attracted to something different than is being presented to them. Like the thing that's being presented to them by the hierarchy is not what young people are being attracted to. So I don't know. What's funny is I'm on Long Island. I'm in New York. Francis comes out and tries to ban the Latin Mass, and my bishop just largely ignores it and just lets the couple of communities we have keep existing, which is great. So I'm fortunate in that. I'm fortunate in that I have a beautiful Latin Mass community that I'm able to go to. I don't know what happens if they get rid of that, though.
I don't know either. It's what we really should talk about. I can't believe we've left this on the table. We haven't talked about it, but it's like, we've been talking about Kayfabe. We've been talking about, the show. I mean, we're Catholics. Like, like there's no bigger show than the sort of the Catholic show. And there's this sort of this strange interplay between Kayfabe and dressing up and, prophilicity that you and I like to talk about. It's there's just and I should point out, and I tried this earlier when we were talking about kayfabe, is like, I'm not actually against kayfabe, like, insofar as we are always acting and performing in our respective spaces and places. Now, the sort of the strange part of it is that you and I can do this remotely, right, and extend it out all over the place, right? But when you go to mass, right? The Mass is a show. It's a production. Now, you and I happen to believe that it's not just a show. It's not just a production, that the miracle of miracles happens, at the holy sacrifice of the Mass at the altar, right? But all of the standing, the sitting, and the moving around, and the singing, and the liturgy, all of that is group play.
It's a play, yeah.
Right.
It's a
And
drama
that's right.
set out before you, and it's how you participate is
Right.
through this drama.
Right. Right. And if you really want to get nerdy on this, there was an explosion of this thing, these events called masques, MASQUE, in the Elizabethan Jacobin times, right? And where these elaborate stage productions in which all of the royals and the lords and the ladies played parts and roles in it. So it was something that you watched and participated at the same time. Interesting that this emerges in the wake of the English Reformation.
Oh,
right?
wow.
So that now that you no longer have the kind of mass as that central. Now, to be fair, even English services are much more like masses than, let's say, their low church,
Then you're
version.
typical Novus Ordo in some
Well,
cases,
right now, for sure. But this idea of this sort of participatory mask, like, it explodes. And what's so funny about this, Anthony, is that, like, it's like gratuitous, over the top spending, right, of this event that comes and it goes, right? And so some of those playwrights, like Shakespeare and Johnson, others, they would make bank. Like, they would just write these like plays off because they were just get paid so much to kind of do it. It's almost like, I don't know, like if you imagine, like Zuckerberg paying several $1 million to be in a music video or sort of something like that, that he could sort of put on his socials, which is kind of like Daily Wire. But anyway, but so there is, at the heart of, like, being human, the heart of being Catholic and Christian, is this idea we engage in group play, right? Orchestrated, designed, liturgical, ritual group play. And so there's something real at the heart of that. But if it's not oriented to and by the real, then it goes off in very strange directions.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, like, Catholicism, especially under Francis, like, okay, so we keep talking about every day I wake up and I go see the Trump show, right? But do you remember every day waking up to see the Francis show? Like, in some way, they're the same figure, just doing different things, but they're the same type of figure. Like, Francis is to the church what Trump is to the country. Like,
right. Okay. So right. So 2 weeks ago, a week ago, freaking Austin Roos, whatever, one of these.
He wrote an article saying we need a Trump figure.
We need a Trump figure. And I'm like, bro, we've got the Trump figure. He's just a Trump you don't like. It's called Pope Francis.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's, of course, like, and like Mike and the gang from, that crew, the Splainer crew, were like, oh, like, no, it can't be Trump. I'm like, oh, this is so horrible. No, we've got him.
We absolutely,
he's the one dismantling.
To not see Francis as the Trump figure in the church, you're blind, right? I mean, he comes in, he does things that are so outside the norm, it shocks everybody, and every single day, especially from after Amoris Laetitia. I mean, but even think about before that, he gets elected, and who am I to judge? And Catholics shouldn't be reading like rabbits. And it was like every day you were waiting to see, what did he do today? I mean, look.
Well, dude, whole careers, whole careers have been forward, right, because of this. No, it's really astounding.
Francis made the Catholic podcasting arena because look, the entire industries got made because of Francis, because you had the Pope-splainer come, and then you have to have the antithesis to the Pope-splainers, the recognize and resist guy. And
that's right.
It's like you have to.
So again, think about this in the kayfabe frame. Like, this is like WWE. Right, all the various camps and groups, and the faces and the heels, and it's all, that's the dynamic.
So much of it, right? And part of it, look, like even we were saying earlier with me, like playing the character of a dumb guinea, like so many of the people that came into this space were, I'm not saying anybody I don't have anybody in specific in mind when I say this, but there is a temptation to put on a tweed suit and have the pipe and present yourself as something you're not, right?
And Inklings 3.0.
It's a strange temptation to have there, and it's it was one thing that when we started our show, I was like very adamant with Rob that I'm like, I'm never presenting myself as something I'm not. Like, I have to be me. Like, whoever I am with my wife and kids, I'm going to be on here. So, which was an interesting thing because a lot of people present themselves as one figure on screen, and then there's somebody else behind the screen, right? So we went on a pilgrimage to Italy. I did it with Patrick Coffin. And half the people there came that because they watched my show. And when we get there, my wife comes too, and we're up at like 2 a.m. drinking, and my wife just looks at one of them. She goes, "Did you have any idea what you were getting yourself into? Like, did you know he was like this?" And he goes, "I gotta be honest. He's kind of this guy on screen. He's actually the guy that I thought he would be, you know?"
Yeah. And that's what, to me, I think that's key, is yes, we're playing a role, look, I play the role of Mr. Zeldin in the classroom, right? I play a role when I do this podcasting stuff. And I know that. The way that you sleep at night, or at least I try, is that whatever I'm presenting right now bears some kind of resemblance to like what I actually am. It can't be an
opposition. It can't be a double life you're living.
Right. And so, my own students have watched these things, and even in my role as Mr. Zeldin, I think one of the reasons why I get along well with my students, not in that kind of buddy sort of way, is that I'm trying to my best to present like who I am. No, I don't want to inflict my bad moods on them. I don't want to inflict all my own personal stuff on them, but I'm going out of my way to present myself to be, right? And that's the thing. Like, I'm performing and being at the same time who I really am, and recognizing that there's always going to be a little bit of a delta there. And that's okay.
Especially as a teacher.
If it's the opposite though, that's where it gets dark.
Yeah, like you can't live a double life. But as a teacher specifically, like I remember there are a few teachers in my life in school that really stood out to me that had a real effect on me. Like one of them was my 9th grade English teacher, because we went through the Greek myths, and something lit up in me when we went through the Greek myths. Like I fell in love with them to the point where I was buying books we weren't reading in school and I'd never done that before. Like I was always the bad kid getting in trouble and stuff, but the way he presented Greek myth to me lit my heart up, and I couldn't wait to read more, So for you, especially as a teacher, young kids don't have mentors anymore. That's like one of the greatest tragedies, I think, in our modern age, because they're all getting their development from these freaking things, right? So if they could actually have that hour or hour and a half interaction with a teacher who looks them in the eye and talks to them and presents themselves to them, like you in a way become a mentor, and then you'll find that student 10-15 years later will come to you and say, "Hey, you didn't even know you did this thing to me, but something you said in class triggered me to actually have an inspiration to go become this later in life." Like you never know what you're saying that God will use in somebody's hearts or in their minds,
Yeah, I was just honestly just yesterday I was joking with one of my colleagues. I was like, when you teach, you never really see the results of your work. At best we work on a time release schedule, and most of the work that I do, I will never see the effects. I really won't. And that's fine. Like whatever it is, what it is. And I joked to my colleague, I said, this way in the summer, I like to cut my own grass. I like to cut my grass because I can see the lines. I can see that, when I fired up the lawnmower, it was a jungle back there. And when I'm done, I can see my work. Because I don't get that. You know what I'm saying? I don't, and it would be weird to get it, right? I mean, it would be weird at the end of every class, like, "Oh, Mr. Zeldin,
what did you learn today?"
Thank you so much. I'm so glad. No, of course, it's completely absurd,
So look, I mean, we're gonna wrap this up, but I love talking with you because they're never scripted, these conversations. They always go in a unique direction. I like not always focusing on church stuff. I like having different conversations. You're always the person I'm going to talk to about like the culture, the things we're seeing in the culture that I'm not so sure about. because you
And
always think a little deeper about it. Like, what was funny about this was I said to you yesterday, I texted you, I was like, I feel like everything in politics is fake right now. And then you saw a tweet by Jonathan Peugeot, and he's like, what is, if you don't know what Kayfabe is, you should definitely start looking it up now. And it was just, I was like, let's just do a show tomorrow. Let's talk about
let's jump in and do it. And I look, and to be fair, obviously I care about the church stuff too, but I have developed a kind of habit to pay attention to other arenas, because I have found that if I can see patterns in other arenas, almost always I can see those same kind of patterns being repeated in these spheres that you and I are more cognizant of. And it really helps me gain a sense of perspective by just watching other arenas, and I, just to sort of offer that to the audience. I think it's an important, skill to develop, is sort of watch other things, because it'll help you pay attention in your own arena.
You see, the entire culture has been divided into a right-left dialectic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everything we see is a right-left dialectic, and Francis brought that dialectic into the church, like he did. But whether you agree with me or not, that's I mean, that's how I see it. So everybody waiting on this next pope right now is like, are we going to get a liberal or a conservative? Those categories shouldn't exist in the church. Like it's just everything being put before us through these screens, because they really are magic devices. And the world, it's actually amazing to me that we have stayed together as a country after the invention of two things: the automobile and the television. Like those two inventions should have ripped society apart, but they figured out how to manipulate us with those things, right? So the automobile, I mean, we used to, everybody's worried about 15-minute cities. That's just a medieval city. Like a medieval city is a 15-minute city. It might actually be better. You'd have your grandparents and your cousins next to you.
I must admit, part of me, even though I don't like the whole Big Brother elements of it, part of me is like, I don't know, 15 minutes sound pretty good. I'd rather not drive.
I'd rather not drive. My car stuck in traffic.
Exactly. So it's a right. So you see there's these subterranean patterns that are playing out that get tagged with certain labels and whatnot, and it's not always helpful. To see. And somebody in the chat earlier was like, "Oh, what does it even mean to be conservative now?" And I said, "That's exactly right. I think the two questions that I always ask is conserve what, and to my progressive friends, progress to what."
Yeah, so like if you're not trying to conserve Christian culture, then you're not a conservative. So like, I just don't think there's any hope of that at this point. There's no way there's nothing left to conserve. There's no Christian culture left to conserve, and I really do think about. There can't look. I hate getting like too dark with this, but a country or a culture that does not have Christ as king can't last. Like it just can't. Now that doesn't mean it ends immediately, but it can't last. Like there's just no hope for a culture that does not serve Christ as king. We have baked into our entire culture this idea of multiculturalism, and people from all over the world and different cultures can be all together. It's doomed to fail. Now, whether that's 5 years from now or 50 years from now, I don't know, but there's no possible way to fix this situation we're in by elections, right? So Trump getting in may have been a good thing because it stemmed the tide or the flow, the direction of things that were going, or it could accelerate things. We don't know. I'm just telling everybody, if you watch this and you're thinking we're either Trump haters or Trump, I don't know. I don't care. I'm just telling you, don't fall for the idea that a political figure is going to fix anything. You have to just pay attention to each individual thing he does. And if something feels off to you, you're probably not crazy. There's probably something off to it. So don't just get sucked into this. Oh, the left hates it, I must love it.
Right. Yeah, no, that's good. I think that's the land. That's good.
Yeah. So, Kale, I love doing these with you, man. They're always
Me too.
fun.
I love it. Appreciate it. I'll be haunting your chat sessions when you're on your live streams this week, as always. So
I put this. We basically put this publicly on Kale's channel now. I put it on my locals and my YouTube members, but I'm going to put it up publicly on my YouTube channel later on, just because I thought it would be better to put it in the afternoon. If you guys are not already subscribe to Kale's YouTube channel. What's your YouTube channel?
I think it's the Kale Zeldin, but just it's just my name is Kale. Like it's weird. So just
So go subscribe to Kale's YouTube channel if you're not already. They're very unique conversations. Like I actually really do enjoy them. He does have conversations that our audience would actually enjoy. He talks to people that in the Catholic world that I probably haven't spoken to yet. So you'll see interesting stuff there. So if you're not, go subscribe to Kale's channel. If you're watching on Kale's channel, go subscribe to Avoiding Babylon.
That's right.
And look for future shows of me and Kale. We always love having conversations. So we text each other pretty often.
All the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
So,
thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you too, Kale. All right. We'll see you guys.